Thank you so much for your patience. As you may be aware, with every event, sometimes there's some little delays, but I think this is the perfect time to start since we have a fair amount of people. I think that it's still early and people are probably still just kind of getting up and coming, making their way up here. I did have a good number that signed up too, so I think we should be expecting, some more people to join us later on as everyone wakes up and kind of make their way up here. All right, so further ado, thank you so much for all of you for being here to support our event, Unity for Wellness, Healing the Mind, Body, and Spirit. My name is Nu, and I'm the founder of Visionari Luminous, which we're the host of this event. I just want to also make just another reminder, another announcement. Earlier, to our vendors, earlier I mentioned about the load in and load out dock. It's actually, if you take your car and you go to the side, by the Aldi side, it'll be over there. So earlier I said in the backpack, but don't go in the backpack. So it'll be in the side, like if we're looking towards this way, it'll be on the left side here to Aldi. So you'll just kind of move your car and go to the back near the side here by the Aldi side, and then you can just load out from there, okay? But yes, thank you all for supporting our event, and we have vendors here, so please make sure to go and say hi to them. Also, like Moklo is here, and we have also photography sessions. So there's just a lot of fun things, and thank you to all of our donors for their wonderful contributions as well. And thank you to our sponsors as well, Baho and Ramen Muay Thai. Thank you to Wilder especially for sponsoring us. And yeah, so thank you to all our panelists, our guest speakers, our healers, practitioners. The purpose of the mission of Visionari Luminous is to destigmatize mental illness, especially in the Asian community. And I think right now we have been really blessed to be able to be here to support especially the Hmong community with spirituality and cultural healing. And we want to continue to expand that so that we are inclusive of other Asian community as well. So hopefully that is the hope. And so we're really happy to have you here to support the work we do, especially with integrating and incorporating cultural healing, art, spirituality into mental health, and how we can continue to address barriers so that for future generations to be able to connect with their roots as well, and for other communities to be able to understand that how crucial cultural healing or even spirituality is, holistic wellness, how important that is for our mental health, okay? So our first presentation for the day, we have Dr. Yi Zhang, and she will be presenting on QPR training. QPR is the acronym standing for Question, Persuade, Refer. So we'll just have her come up here, and everyone, let's please give her a round of applause.
Okay, good morning. Nhớ trong Allah. Suicide prevention. Okay, so I'm a little bit behind on time, so I will be trying to be fast to just respect the other speakers that follows me. However, I've done it before, so I think we can make this work. The audio does not work, so I'm going to put the microphone to the laptop and then play a video from there. So let me know if you guys don't hear the audio.
To imagine, but according to the World Health Organization, over 800,000 people die each year of suicide. That is more.
Can you guys hear?
No.
No. You know what? Abort. I'll just go to the top. Thank you, though. Okay. So Busha gave the Project Chandu, which is a nonprofit organization on suicide prevention. We're going to talk about more on the QPR Institute, which stands for Question, Persuade, Refer, which is a evidence-based modality to help identify somebody who's struggling with suicidal ideations, thoughts of harm, and then kind of tool to help them get help, to help themselves. And so I like to start with this set of slides, right? On the left, it's a CAT scan of the brain, of a normal brain. And this is a CAT scan of a brain with a stroke. You can see kind of the darkened area. This is the CAT scan of a brain with cancer. You can see kind of that bright tumor in the brain. This is the CAT scan of a brain with dementia. You can see that the brain volume has shrinked. And this is the CAT scan of somebody who struggles with depression, anxiety, addiction, violence and anger, and suicidal thoughts. So the take-home message is that, we don't have fancy tools to demonstrate somebody who struggles with suicidal thoughts or who is, in a vulnerable mental state. This is a psychiatrist who died by suicide. This is an actor who died by suicide. This is a football player who died by suicide. Sorry, it's loading. And it's still loading. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, I think the PowerPoint's gonna reboot itself. Maybe. So similar to CPR, where that's an intervention to save a life when somebody's going through a cardiac arrest or they're no longer responsive, QPR is a method to save a life by talking, by asking questions, identifying signs and symptoms of somebody who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts. So what is the purpose of QPR? QPR is not intended to be a form of counseling. It is not treatment. It is a modality to offer hope through positive action. And so I'm going to talk about some mental health facts since we weren't able to get that video going. So what is mental illness? Có phụ một cái nhô xía là do có một từ mó nhô xía. Có phụ nhô xía vì cái như tụi mình nhúa. Có phụ một cái nhô xía vì cái nhiệt xía. Có phụ một cái nhô xía vì cho cái ô hao lử. Nó xía cái cần gấu. Nó xía cái chinh gờ, nó xía cái mó kính kinh. Nó xía vì lúc ninh ngủ chỉ trời vì xía xá. Pneumonia or the disease of depression or depressive disorder law. Một sai the symptom or pneumonia. Bây giờ có từ xía là xía khó xía. Bây giờ có nông hải tiệt có bố xía bồn dữ. Là xía lưng dữ. Có bự chỉ cho gió. Là xía có xả bự tạm lý sư. Có chỉ cá là nó mỏ. Là xía có xả nó mỏ tạm lý sư. Lúc có lúc ba lứ rừng gầu ô lý ý bay. Có hơi rừng gầu ô ý thông. Có sai có tụ khiên chỉ mua nông lì. Có mong có tẩy tống có lý có nó khá nó có là chỉ ô tư chỉ đạo tư có mong hay tiền có chỉ báo có từ khi mà có mong hay tiền rồi dù họ tới lại là chỉ có ta cái chia sẻ là chỉ có chỉ hay tiền ở trong lúc nào đều một trọng tung đi. You know, we talked earlier. You talked about destigmatizing mental illness law. You know, it's just not unique to the Hmong community. Most Americans do not consider depression a health problem. 3 in 5 Americans consider depression as a personal weakness. But it's not. You're not crazy. Chỉ có bự. Chỉ có yếu tố nên, chỉ có bà. Chỉ có chỉ có ít tính nên lớn. Suicide rates has increased significantly in these past decade. You know, there was a reduction kind of around COVID 2018 to 2020, but that has kind of peaked again, and it will continue to increase. While most people who become depressed do not become suicidal, a lot of people who die by suicide does struggle with depression law. So kỹ tụi mình sẽ chọn cho xia na chỉ xài tiền mua kỹ cho xia, ta chỉ phải trong the failing nên từ ấy mua kỹ như the those chọn cho xia là all tụi mình nhưng mua kỹ cho xia. Cái báo tao hay thì women suffer from depression more than men. Cái báo tao hay thì kỹ cho xia suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts như chỉ xài tin. Kids also struggle with it too. Kids, adolescent. Depression is the leading cause of suicide in that population. And sometimes depression can happen as early as preschoolers. Có cô sai tế tạo tụi mình nó chỉ biết nhau chỉ biết mẹ nữ cô chỉ bảo cho tế kỹ nó chỉ là chỉ thế ta chỉ đi mua cho tôi chỉ tao mua cái kindergarten cho trường nhóm head start lâu nhưng mua tụi mình dùng tới là cô tao sáng cho hay tiền rồi đi lấy một cái như xia lâu là tôi xia lâu. But the thing about depression is it's treatable. In fact, it is highly treatable. 7 out of 10 people who seek help, whether that's in the form of therapy or medications, their symptoms do improve. Lọ thì cái món nào thuê thì cho kỹ cho xuyên nó từ món cho xuyên nó nè. Do hay tiền nếu cũng mua chắc bình sự câu là ô tô ít nên người sẽ chọn để cho xuyên á. Chị ở nhà họ có chính chế cái phá, vì đây tiền ít nên người tàu chạy cho cái phá rồi cho kỹ cho xuyên này nè, cho kỹ từ món cho xuyên này nè. Cô ấy cho cái có chở để cho xuyên còn đi họ suicide rồi còn đi cho cái sẽ chọn để cho xuyên á. We know that in Asian Americans, mental health is viewed as a weakness, and talking openly about it is not often encouraged long. Nhớ đâu cho nên người du học là sẽ hay cái hay những món kia nào rồi, chúng có những thả cho your feelings, thả cho depression, thả cho cái nhiều xe từ món nhiều xe nó, nhiều ít hồi có bé hay những chỉ cho thả cho nó. Và chỉ ta nên đợi tới rồi bé hay những câu chuyện mua hỏi thì sao mua giờ dùng mua nhiều lúc bé thua tờ gì nó thấy nó theo dõi hay nhiều nè. We do know that suicide is the leading cause of death among Asian Americans between the age of 20 to 24. Nhớ đâu thì cho nên du học nhớ đâu cái chemical nó rồi tàu ta chỉ nên nó lọ cho nên còn một trong những cái blog cho nên nghe cho rồi du học tàu ta chỉ nên phải chống do suicide, phải chống do lời cho share chỉ do cái món kinh kinh, it is suicide. Cái bao tàu hay cái nhớ đâu là phải cho mong nó lọ cho mong tứ luôn sai luôn á mong adolescents. They are 5 times more likely to engage in self-harm behaviors. Yo có mỗi từ luôn sai luôn mong agent tất cả tiền luôn có luôn trong nó có mỗi bị trong này cả có mỗi bị trong là hay ninh nó để cho mong phải trong từ chim bao đó lấy tàu tây giả online là từ khi còn mó là từ khi they've engaged in self-harm behaviors more than the cohorts their current age. We know that there is disparities, right? Okay, we're talking about suicide. But why is it that we don't hear much about it? That's because the statistics says that Indian Native Americans, not only the Asians, they call rate in China, they call rate nhưng tới đó nó lựa chọn cho chồng nó chị bé hay thì bé muốn biết chọn những Asia bị cho là hay nên chị biết là Asia mà những chơi đùa ta chỉ nhớ cho bé họ bé hay nên món đó là suicide is something we hear about suicide nếu như họ tới mình câu trong họ bé hay nên món đó cái depression nếu như họ tới mình nhớ cho bé hay nên món đó thì toàn cho chị nói hay tiền mới từ luôn xìa toàn cho chị nói hay tiền mua ít trời là khu nhà gì là ship to lọ. Suicide also happens late in life. Chỉ là cho lo, chỉ là cho mình nhiều giáo sư, ta chỉ cho lâu thế lọ. Cô yêu chính đi cho cái, nhiều xe, cô yêu chính đi cho cái, là cho xe kia. We know that when older adults make a suicide attempt, it is much more serious. It is almost always a serious attempt. Chỉ do hai tiền như linh những mất tiền là họ để đánh ai chứ, ta chỉ nghĩ ô tô tây giả do trở chỉ thà chỉ nghĩ we know that oftentimes in older adults who try to end their life, they often intend to die in their attempt. Hence, it is a much more serious, much more lethal attempt. And we know that in older adults, there are only 4 attempts. They only need to attempt 4 times before they become successful. So now I'm going to talk about some myths and facts about suicide law. Trong lần đầu từ xã hội thì bây giờ cho cái người cho là cho xe nó người giờ ít cho cái chỉ muốn là từ chạy tàu chỉ muốn từ ba tàu it's inevitable. Actually, có chính thì when somebody is in crisis and they get the help they need, they may never become suicidal again. Có chính thì giờ thì từ ninh người được bóng đầu cho cái phỏ xe nó nên thì tàu cái ba bây giờ cũng có chạy tàu người chỉ xa cho cái cho xe trong gì lớn. Sometimes we think that asking a person about suicide will only make them angry and that will plant a seed and increase the risk for suicide. But we know that the truth is that asking somebody about suicide lowers their anxiety, increases their vulnerability, they open up more, they talk about it, and this in turn lowers their risk for a suicide attempt. Trong linh đạo tụi bé con trai hay tiền cho bé thả cho nó là tiền nhiều chồng cầu nữa cho cái nó nông cho họ nên nó lúc bao lưỡi nhiều sáng cho cái cho nó chia ta chỉ biết bảo tao hay tiền còn lại chỉ một chính biết bảo tao hay tiền thằng cái thứ này con rùa con lông con cũng mua họ trai hay tiền tao nếu mua cái nhiều chia tao nếu cứ sáng cho nên nó rồi giờ có chùaของเจ้านุ่งก็chùaของเจ้าน้อยเนี่ยถาก็chùaของเจ้าบ้านปลีหรือเชียขอเราตื้อให้เจ้ากี่เจ้านึงก่อนในชีวิตซ้อนในเจ้าเชีย Sometimes we think that experts are the only ones that can prevent suicide, but that's not true. The fact is that suicide prevention is everybody's job. It's everybody's business. Anybody can prevent suicide. Trong khi nó từ sai thì suicide hay depression nó cũng tự nhiên tự cởi tiền nó cũng chỉ có biết từ tôi, ta chỉ có chỉ có tránh theo lọ. Vì đó họ cho cái ít tôi nên sản xuất nó sẽ mà youต่อ ít tôi nên cởi tiền lọ ba trở tí nên sẽ lọ trong tôi nên nó thả sẽ chỉ yo chỉ tham rồi, họ nó mà cho xua tôi nên cho họ lử, bây giờ thì họ có ba có chế rồi, bây giờ có từ mình nhỏ là chỉ có từ khu nếu tôi chỉ xa một chúa cái ba na họ nói có cho họ lử họ nói bây giờ cho họ lử. People considering suicide keep their plans to themselves, but that's not true. Most people who are considering suicide communicate their intent sometime during that week before their attempt. Thì trong mà cái quân sai thì cậu như là sao cho nên số xe nó trên rồi chỉ phải tới đó từ ta chỉ cái bảo tàu hay thì ít tuần này người sao cho nên số xe nó ní ô tô tây giả bây tới rồi xe phải tới hay thì ní sao cho nên nó ní mua tây giả gồm ba chế lưu bản thí luận thí lưu vị đó ôn tây rồi ôn tây giả rồi cho nên số xe nó. Sometimes we think that those people who talk about suicide do not do it, but the fact is that people who talk about suicide may try or they may even complete a suicide attempt. Bây giờ sáng tạo hay thì nếu là hiện tại nếu hai giờ nếu như chỉ tàu ta chỉ có trên tiền thì chống cho hai tàu chỉ lấyอยู่ว่าtàu要อยู่chỉ là chỉnh như chỉ là ba cái tàu nếu cứ chỉ mua cho thầu cái tàu đó cho cái việc cho nên cho xe thế. Sometimes people think that once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. But the truth is suicide is the most preventable kind of death. And any small, almost any kind of positive action may save a life. Thì trong xã hội thì ít tôi nên người nữ xã cho nên cho xe vì như chỉ muốn từ ba tàu nữa ta chỉ họ tránh thì ít tôi nên người xã cho cái cho nên cho xe nó sợ có ô tô tây giả mày tây giả ô còn nên mua cái chia sẻ cái và còn nó sẽ nhưng mua các bình sử bình trời tàu nên cho cái nhiều xe cho cái xã cho nên cho xe giờ ít thôi là đi thay nên tụi khen đi thay nên cho xe. So the question becomes, how can you help, right? By asking the question. The Q in QPR, asking questions. However, there are some things that we can look out for before we jump to asking that question. Cú chỉ là để you nhớ thì nó thì có một sản có sơ suy cú chỉ nên là thế ít tuần này những bóng được cái khó xin ní môi trời kia tờ na warning signs, clues. And it's important that we take all signs seriously. Thế rồi you cứ sai thì nó ôn chỉ tao thế rồi you cứ sai thì nó chỉ như là hai sự ta chỉ you chỉ tao gà xé hay thì ít tuần này người hai tao người xá tao ní môi trời tình sự ô tao na. And so when we talk about clues and cues and signs and symptoms and behaviors, you know, in the QPR module, they break it up to direct verbal clues, indirect verbal clues, behavior clues, situational clues. Chỉ những cô một tí à, ít tuần này hai cái tàu tàu rồi, ta chỉ thấy rõ cô yêu ai tuần này là chỉ hai cái lo luôn được tàu, ta chỉ ní hai tàu tí à, trong cô ba lô rồi trở lại thuê tàu thì ok tuần này nó một cái nhau xía là xía ní sợ xa cho ai thì cho cái cho nên cho xía rồi, tí rồi tuần này nó ní ô tàu tí à là xía ní tụi chịu bự ní tụi dạng rồi những lông tàu hay thì tuần này nó tàu ní mua cho cái nhau xía cũng được cho cái phỏ xí nó. 老师要诶莫得也好，对那种路宁你只那口口路宁诶，我都你牙需要诶你莫这给测新到呀。So I'm going to talk about those 4 categories and kind of things to look out for. And so in direct verbal clues, right, things to listen out for is when somebody says, I decided to kill myself. I wish I were dead. I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to end it all. If such and such does not happen, I'll kill myself. Thì cho verbal clues nó cho ai lấy hai cái tao lo tao là thế rồi tụi mình lấy hai cái của yếu tố của tụi kinh là chỉ của chỉ sáu mình nhóm gì là lo chỉ thế rồi là của hai tao thì do của chỉ tao họ nó thì của sự này rong đùa thì cho nó cho ai vừa tao cho bọn chim luôn tao thấy tụi mình hay nó thì vừa tao một hỏi thì ok tao tụi mình nó nhưng xã chỉ trong là vừa ôn lại vừa tên thiệt tao kể ba vừa ôn lại vừa tên ba tao tụi mình nó. There's also indirect verbal clues. Tí lo lùi tụi mình chỉ hai cái lo lùi tới ta chỉ nghĩ hai cái ba lùi trở lại. So sometimes we hear people say, I'm tired of life. I just can't go on anymore. My family would be better off without me. Who cares if I'm dead anyways? I just want out. I don't want to do this anymore. I won't be around much longer. Pretty soon you don't have to worry about me. Thế cho chị cô mong nào là lâu là cô hay thấy ông ngồi phụ nữ nó số cái số đùa nó chỉ từ mù chỉ từ mong ở nhà chỉ của nấy cô nhớ là nhà á sư cô nhớ là gì mò sư. Okay, so those are some indirect kind of poetic verbal clues that might indicate that this person is struggling or having thoughts of suicide. There are also behavior clues, and so anybody with a previous suicide attempt, that's high risk for a future suicide attempt. Somebody who now is suddenly interested in trying to secure lethal means, purchasing guns, kind of stockpiling their medications. If they're struggling now with depression, with moodiness, with co-occurring symptoms of other mental health disorders, now they're struggling with thoughts of hopelessness. They start to put their personal fears in order. They start to give away prized possessions. Now there's a sudden interest or a disinterest in religion. There's drugs and alcohol that comes into the picture, whether they're abusing it or they relapsed after being sober for a number of duration. People can suddenly start getting really moody, really angry, really agitated, really irritable. Chỉ cái tôi dạng giữ cái của chúng ta long theo rồi hiểu nó lọ chỉ có ít tôi nên nghĩ tao gió đến rất chia lọ lại là chia mình xì gió đến rất chia lọ lại this puts them at risk. Ít tôi nên nghĩ chỉ vấn đề cho cái yếu bỏ nên mình cái sự sáng mình cái nhiệt bỏ nên cái bài yếu bỏ và chỉ ít tôi nên nghĩ mình gà chua nữa, đó chỉ chính nó là chua, đó chỉ phép phải cần gà chua ấy, mình muốn để chua khởi chế tinh ná lô, cho ná lô cho ba hay tiểu khi là nó ná thì nhô xé cái gì cũng mua cho chua nó cũng nó cả ta. Là chỉ ở đây này là bí ba hay tiểu nó cố tình cố tê xí phai cho mình nhiều. Là chỉ ở đây cho nên nghe thì nó chỉ lấy tiền của đi của chua của gió yên của chở. Thế rồi cái thứ này thì ít sự chỉ bao tờ nó lọ nó gọi là cái share lưu là gì chỉ tàu nó bao tờ cho nó quy cho giảm dữ hay tao thì ok tụi nên nó gọi nếu chỉ nhỏ đi cố nếu chỉ normal nếu nhỏ chỉ tù đi giá ta vào nữa. And then there are situational clues too. Thế rồi họ yêu luôn nên không mua tay giả và một chỉ cho đi share xa nên ở đâu ít nên nếu mua cái nhiều share cho hỏi nếu ta cái chia share ở đâu rồi người xa cho nên cho share nữa. So being fired from work, being expelled from school. Nghe thấy ít nên là muốn để thao tờ thì hậu lửa là sẽ ít mình nhồi nên cỡ chỉ trong ngày là muốn nên chờ tờ là sẽ muốn tới mình tờ chỉ cần tại là còn đi long school nữa. Hoặc là cũng thấy khỏi very stressful situation tao tự nên nó. On recent unwanted move, tức là nếu cũng chỉ xa hay để yo chỉ tờ mu nhó sợ lá lô chế thổi ôi nói cứ yo thôi ôi nói tôi nên cũng mua họ destabilize nó câu nữa thế chỉ bảo hay để giá tổng đây người yo trong trả thì nó ôi đâu tự nhiên nó muốn mua kiểu như xia they could have lost in major relationships lo tí giờ ấy nhớ học đầu từ ninh nó nữ lúc ninh mua tê cho không kỹ như ấy chưa sinh trong nữ nó ấy cho kỹ không kỹ như nữ ấy họ kỹ đi thay như cho kỹ nhau xia như ấy cho kỹ ở nữ một là nữ ấy nó cho kỹ không kỹ như nữ tu là nó là xia kỹ không kỹ nó nữ tu là cho nó cứ ấy thôi ở đầu từ ninh mua kỹ nhà xia kỹ ta kỹ như xia ấy cứ đều cứ sát cho thì nó nên cho xia death in the family, death in the spouse and the kids, best friend, death by suicide, increases the risk of suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts among people who are close to that person. Thầu ít tu nhiều là xia ít tu có từ lúc nữa tao ta cho xia rồi nè, họ nói quý ấy khỏi cô ở đây tôi nên mua cái như xia, chỉ ta lên đời thấy tôi nên người tao cho người cho xia vì cái như xia nào là xia người tao ta vì cho cái cho người cho xia nào nè, thầu ít tôi nên đời nữa tua because of suicide chẳng nên ít quan chi đời nữa nữa chỉ nên nữa cho không như gì nữa are at risk. Thế rồi thì tôi nên nó cho người cho xia thì cho đâu là sai thì nhưng mà của xia thì cũng trong thiệt. Diagnosis of serious or terminal illness. Thế rồi thì có một cho cái từ tham mỏ chỉ lại có mua từ món nó giấy từ món lo từ món nó chỉ mình khó chỉ tao rồi họ nói cô ở đấy cho nên mua cái nhà xe ấy lại thì nhưng khó tao chỉ tôi trongตัวนะnên nói cái nó nhà áo đã chỉ lọ. People who experience I think my computer is gonna probably shut down again because it's freezing. Sudden loss in freedom or fear of punishment. So legal issues is kind of can take away people's freedom, right? Thế rồi họ tự nhiên nói nữa nên là nếu cho cái thay因nếu cho cái mù lò nè, nhớ nếu有目去找了些啥了，需要掉了哩，我吵架见了了，叫你带就这呢，thì còn nó cứ ở ô đấy thôi, nó cũng không phải là nên nó chỉ ta đi nào lại của cái nên nhớ nó chỉ ta đi nào lại của chỉ một cái thay因gì là nè. Domestic violence is also something that we should look out for too, especially in our community law. Ví dụ có phải chống chỉ thấu biết nó hay thì murder suicide, homicide suicide, right? Ở cái này thì mong nó nè, thì tới rồi tới khu nhà gì là sẽ tới khóc của tới chính này nè, họ là lúc khóc của là lên là một cái chỉ họ sinh chính đa xía, là một cái chỉ đa xí chế, thì còn nó cứ hơi khỏi ở đâu chính mình tới bông tới cái plot xí nó, it becomes high risk for them. And we also know that violence prevention is suicide prevention law. Thôi tôi nên nói như tôi dạng từ lông lỡ nó chỉ cụ ở đâu tao như xé lù là xé mình chỉ tàu mà bao tàu thì nhớ đâu họ biết là nên món nào mà cái gì nhỉ mù do hai giống này lọ chỉ phải chống chỉ hậu dù lúc nào lúc chỉ là chỉ mua họ nè chỉ đầu tư mua cái chỉ sĩ hậu sinh mua cái sĩ tàu sĩ trả sĩ chế hậu chỉ nên mua tiệp họ nhớ dễ thì this becomes they call it in QPR the legal triad where the family becomes really at really high risk for a tragedy to happen. And so as I kind of table the talk about homicide suicide law, there's a lot of theories about why that is. It is often multifactorial. Chia hay tia ít ho hay tia ở đây ít khu nhà gì nó mua cái gì trả gì cú to có gì cú to của tụi khi nữa. That should be about that if we can get the gun out of the home, that prevents any impulsive acts from happening, or if we could get guns to be locked, that can prevent something lethal from happening. Because oftentimes pulling the gun trigger is faster than retracting the thought, that impulsive drive to end that from happening. And we also know that oftentimes when people do end up dying by suicide, over 50% of the time it is by firearm and gun violence. And so they bảo tao thì ok, có một anh thôi cho nên là cho là cho xuyên nó lọ, có một cho là cái thì ok là ô đi cha, bây giờ là chỉ để bỏ là chỉ là nó chua là lần đây là khi là ô đi cha nè, cha là chỉ cho phải bỏ giờ cho cái chỉ bỏ là cho xuyên. And so the kind of moving on QPR then, the P in QPR, persuade law. Có thể nói that okay, there's these indirect cues, there's these direct verbal clues, there's these situational clues, there's these behavior clues, there's danger in the home, there's access to gun in the home. Then what do we do next law? Có thể nói that okay, what the risk factors đó là thì nó có yếu lý giải cũng như nó ní biết cho nên nó nếu không có những mô lên nó hầu nếu tụi dạng gì những lòng lên nó nếu bốc nó sẽ kể bỏ xí rồi thì nó có yếu lý giải yếu chờ tụi nên nó nè còn nếu chỉ cho nên sẽ xí thì họ còn đây nói thì persuade là you xí you lúc xúa là blia you lúc xúa là thả nó tụi nên nói nông nếu cho lưu nó nè. Học gì lọ, có cái PowerPoint nó làm về QPR lọ nè thì mình mua tàu dạng nhỏ hậu nè thì có thể là ok của chị của laptop để họ cũng chạy về cho chị vào được cái laptop nó thì mình chỉ kia đó chị không có của laptop nó một bên đây tàu đây tàu khổng nhỏ hậu QPR có PowerPoint nó hậu. So then how to ask the questions, okay? So we're gonna go to persuading somebody to talk, persuading to get somebody to get help, persuading ways to contract for safety and to develop some future-oriented goals. So how not to ask the suicide question long. You know it you get in tao rong e ning an the tishia, that she on day go peji de go pe de you just see tall in on. Don't ask things like that's stigmatizing. You're not going to kill yourself, are you? You're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? You wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? Suicide is such a dumb idea. Like, surely you're not thinking about suicide. Well, you chỉ nông ô từ lấy nó go you lo nông you ô đâu tụi nên nó hay à cơ xia na. You chỉ cho hai cái chia có chuột cho có cái xả lên nó là chia có ô chả có xả tới cái nhà chuột lên nó là chia có lấy có ít nên người ta cho nên rất xem là chuột sắp tới lên lo tao cái chỉ xả lên đó là bỏ you tư hay chỉ trong đây là you tư xí lo judgment trong đây là chỉ tụi nên nó còn là chỉ cơ xia thì chỉ sản thao you thà nữa. So tips for asking the question. So if in doubt, don't wait, just ask. If the person is reluctant, be persistent. It's important that you talk to the person alone in a private setting. You have to let this person talk freely. You have to give yourself time to kind of create that safe space. You tập you phim rồi thì ok rồi họ nói hơi sơ xí họ chọn trai rồi you cũng một họ kể thì ok tụi mình nói ní nhớ xia do cú tụi mình nói tê rồi cú yếu sát rồi thì cho một số xia thế là bỏ do tụi mình một họ kể sát rồi này you chỉ tâm thiếu lúc xí hở rồi nó tụi mình nói thả you chỉ tâm nông tụi mình nói thì you có sai cho cái số xia tê rồi tụi mình nói này cú you chỉ khi kia khi xia khi cái đó you thành thì đó you tao ocean day you chỉ cho hay thì ok you bài học lử nó chỉ you bài cần tới chỉ you nông tụi mình nó chỉ chơi thì ok chỉ sáng đi ra là bỏ and then you findนะ you have to let this person talk freely you have to build that rapport กับตัวนี้อยู่นอกเชื่อตัวนี้นอนเลยพี่เชื่อเราอยู่กับนิ่งเจนอยู่นะนิ่งเจนเดี๋ยวโอเคอยู่นี่เคจันเตี้ย Yeah, along those lines, privacy is important. You chỉ thôi muốn là nhớ tới tệ thà nè, tệ rồi vậy nhưng mà tôi chỉ xia lo cái nó cái hào lo, nhưng mà you chỉ cho sinh trí, you như bao tệ tụi nên nó nửa hậu nửa nên nửa mua cái sơ sinh tao già, tệ rồi còn nửa tụi nhớ nửa trong tụi tụi lòng rồi. But pull that person out of that situation and have a private conversation. And so in QPR questions, so there's a direct approach and a indirect approach to asking questions. And then the next part is persuading somebody to stay alive. And then the last part is referral. So who can you go to get this person to get help? Who can you refer this person to get help? Because remember, QPR is not a treatment. It's not a intervention, it's a modality to identify high-risk people to save a life. So when asking questions, there's a less direct approach. You can start with just kind of skirting around the question of suicide. Have you been unhappy lately? Have you been very unhappy lately? Have you been so very unhappy lately that you've been thinking about ending your life? Do you ever wish you could just go to sleep and not wake up? And then there's the direct approach. When people are as upset as you are, or as you seem to be, they sometimes wish they're dead. They sometimes wish they're better off dead. I wonder if you feel that way too. I wonder if you've been thinking about that as well. You're going through a lot. If I was in your shoes, I might be thinking about ways to escape the suffering. I might be thinking about suicide, or other people could be worried thinking about suicide. Is that something that you've been thinking about? You look really miserable, you look like you're suffering. I wonder if you're thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about killing yourself? And then the next thing is persuading somebody to stay alive. Cô nên nhớ là nhà cô sát cho tiền cô cho xe chỉ muốn người cô sát cho tiền cô yêu nó chọn rồi nha cô sát cho tiền cô nhìn vào hai dòng kề một chỉ lo rồi một bắt tên la rồi. Then what do you do? Lúc khi lúc trong thả tới chung một người rồi cô đã chỉ ô là xe chung một người họ lúc xe lấy là sang thì cái ba na. So now you come in and you try to persuade them to stay alive. You listen to the problem. You give them your full attention. And you do this from a non-judgmental perspective. You offer hope in any form. The tiniest hope can kind of change that mindset to save a life when somebody's struggling with suicide. Có thể mình cô chỉ nhớ xem một từ thiên đầu dùng thế cái ba rồi thì mua cho cái ba đầu có yêu chủ cho cho để pin sân mong sau từ những một kỹ như xe chỉ là có những linh sử nó chỉ là những bây giờ là lũ con bây giờ rất con. It's hard right now and it will get better. It's hard right now and there's light at the end of the tunnel. You don't have to suffer alone. And then as somebody who is struggling with suicidal thoughts, it's also important to think about what can I do to help ensure that this person stays alive in the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, in the next hour, in the next day, right? So we move to, okay, let's do things to contract this person for safety. Chị thấy cái này nó sẽ cái như là mà nếu như sát sao hay tiền cho cái cho nó cho xe mà chị thầu nếu khi nhau nữa chị có yêu tao xí chú ý có hay cái ok chỉnh chua của nhau nữa nó có yêu ô li trà ấy theo đi chở tao có cho xe có yêu ô li trà có thể yêu chỉ có cho xe nếu nó mà nó then you start to kind of negotiate. Just be like, hey, can is it okay if I call you tonight? mono kuliku huko botao ichagu tax ko yushito teiku lo shia o taki tỉnh shi hợp bánh nó mò lo shia mu khano e ko tu ning la shi ko yo chú tàu nữ lúc xưa còn lo còn nữ xã cho hay thì ok chuyện chùa tụi ninh nó nhớ họ cũng ninh nó chuyện chùa họ thấy mình nó chuyện chùa họ nó mày nó cũng yêu chúng nhớ cho họ nó cho. And so you try to see if this person can contract for hope for the future, and then you follow through with that. Okay, thì có okay, Linh nói sẽ gì, you know, mà xin chỉ ít trả chồng được mà chỉ ít trả chồng được cũng là hôn nó có thả nữa, có mua cái nhau sẽ nó chỉ hôn nó cũng thả theo, and then you follow through with that. You follow through with kind of the plan that you guys agreed upon. And it's also important to ask if this person is willing to seek help. Cũng luôn có cái mình lo thế nữ nó nhà hình cho có lời của cũng sơ sinh đâu nhà lo cũng muốn chơi cái ba. Sometimes when somebody who is struggling, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of fear of judgment. And so that help-seeking behavior is not there. It's hard to seek help. And so if you can partner with them and be like, okay, I know this clinic, I know this provider, let's go get help together. Lashia, I'm so worried about you. Is it okay if I call 911? Is it okay if I call 988 to get a professional out here to talk to you to see what we can do to get you to get help? And so, one thing that I want to part on as I wrap up my talk is it's important to offer hope. Offering hope is what will prevent suicide. Offering that hope, whether it's in the form of, doing something in the next 20 minutes together, or contracting for safety, or partnering to go to therapy, or partnering to go to the emergency department together, that is going to be important once you have identified these behaviors, these clues. Once this person has admitted to having these thoughts, then your job is to kind of get this person to get help. And as you guys are, engaging in these community talks, it's also important to establish a network of people, to kind of tell people that, hey, I went to this event and I learned about suicide prevention, and I want to be somebody who can help other people get help, but I too need a network of people, a network of providers. Can you be in that network? And so you guys could kind of bounce ideas off of each other, because you don't have to do this alone, but it's going to show up when you least expect it, and it's important to have some of these knowledge, some of these skills, so that you can navigate these challenging situations in the future. I'm sorry, I think I'm a little bit over time, but questions? Yeah, niche one no je kuli ku ho tha lo sorry no say thank you all.
All right, everyone. Once again, that was Dr. Yi Zhang from Project Chandu. Let's give her another round of applause. Thank you so much. All right, so I just want to make another announcement here that we do have our fundraiser drawing here. For those of you who just walked in. For the fundraiser drawing, we'll be doing a drawing at approximately like lunchtime, which will be like 11:30. So stick around. All the proceeds will be going towards like our future community work and like giving back to our community again through these like healing events and also mental health awareness. And talking like a lot of our events have discussions about like cultural healings, spirituality, and how does everything all integrated and how do they impact your mental health. So that's the work that we're doing, and we're really striving hard to reach our goal. So we would really appreciate any kind of help. So yes, we do have some fun prizes here. So there's a 1 hour deep relaxation massage by Rejuvenate Therapy, and that is like $5 tickets. So you can get it over here at this table right here. This is Mandy, wave your hand. Yep. And then we have the pressed nails by Get Your Nails Done, and that's like starting at $1 tickets. And then we do have 3 hour rental studio from Her Canvas. She's a really wonderful photographer, and she does have her own studio. So if you haven't checked it out yet, this might be a good opportunity. And then we also have nails by Chloe's Collections, which is starting off at $1 as well. And then self-care package value, which is at value of $250. But then the ticket is like $1, starting at $1 ticket. And then we do have Vinny's 1 hour photo, Vinny's images, and that is a 1 hour photo session. So $5 tickets. So please, any spare time or in between breaks or, whenever, just walk up here. And then we will, really appreciate that. Thank you. Next, we do have some snacks. So if you guys haven't seen it already, we have the snacks out in the back over there by the kitchen area over there, the cafeteria area over there. So you can help yourself. We have like some drinks too, so water, tea, coffee, help yourself, okay? All right, so next up here, we have our next speaker, Dr. Tally Zhang, who will be presenting on like using the spoken word to heal wounds. Let's give her another round of applause.
Good morning. How are y'all doing? Good. We are needing our IT guy to come and help make sure that we're casting to the right screen, so give us a minute. This may be a good opportunity maybe to grab coffee, snacks.
You guys know we're in retrograde, Mercury retrograde, big things, right? Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on, technical stuff. Yeah. Mercury retrograde, yeah, Mercury. Very turbulent, things already, that's Mercury retrograde, and then that's like the full shower, like, oh shit. I have no idea, yeah. Don't be surprised. Oh, good. And then I'll let you put it back. Okay. All right.
All right, I'll just give everyone 1 minute and then we'll resume. All right, just for the sake of time, we'll just go ahead and just resume and you guys can all kind of settle down in a bit here, but we'll just get started. All right, once again, Dr. Tully.
All right, thank you for being flexible today, everyone. All right, and so hopefully we can get started here. Daughter, speak with a delicate tongue, so that words will drip from your lips and send the boys running, bucket in hand, ready to capture every syllable. Daughter, rise with the sun and dance in the steam of rice cooking in the morning. Greet your new mother and father with a gentle smile as they criticize the texture of your work. Daughter, be like the blue ocean water. Flow with your husband's demands. Trickle down the multiple paths carved out for you and cleanse your household with your purity. Daughter, be like the cold earth's mud and mold your dreams, desires, and hunger after your husband's, and live in harmony, unified and supportive. Daughter, learn to love your new family more than you love your old, for when time stops and your body is laid to rest, you will belong with them. Daughter, keep your skin soft as dough, but grow your heart to be as fierce as a tiger. When you learn to accept these things, strength will become of you. Daughter, laugh when you are hurt. Bite your tongue when you are angry. Be strong when you are weak, and let no one look into your eyes. Daughter, be subservient. Remain silent. Follow others. Work hard. Be strong. Love unconditionally. Forgive others. Quiet your soul. Kill your dreams. Live for your children. See, but don't speak. Feel, but don't cry. Fear, but don't run. For I cannot protect you. And if you don't listen to these words of wisdom, the world will fight you, and they will rip your spirit apart. And I cannot be there to comfort you. And I cannot bear your sorrow. And I cannot heal your wounds. And I cannot erase the pain. And I just want your life to be as easy and simple as possible. Daughter, one day, when you have children of your own, maybe then you will understand. Mama, thank you for your love and concern. I will find my way. I am courageous, strong, and resilient because of you. Gunia, be assured that I will bring you honor and joy. Thank you. I want to talk with you all today about how we can empower minoritized people, minoritized communities, by using spoken word as an art form, by using ways of healing that have been traditional in so many communities of color. My name is Dr. Tali Vang. I am a psychologist by training, and I have been practicing psychology for quite a while. Currently, I work mostly with systems and doing a lot of systems work to really tackle different forms of oppression, racism, sexism, etc. And so I'm excited to be here today to share with you all some of the things that are really, really important to me, and that is, how do we honor parts of our cultures, our communities, ourselves, and how do we bring that into our healing? So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how decolonizing what research suggests as common stressors, and also for historically marginalized groups, I should say. And then also we're going to assess some predictors of resilience or protective factors and how we can actually cope with these adversities. We're going to review some of the benefits of spoken word as an art form. How many of you are familiar with spoken word? Can I get a show of hands? All right. Okay, we got about maybe half of the people in the room. Good. For those that are not familiar with spoken word, it's really poetry, but performance poetry. So it's not just putting your thoughts and emotions on paper, but it's also the ability to then release that out. And then here's the fun part. You probably see pieces of paper on the table and pen. I'm going to ask that you all participate with me. So we're going to give you an opportunity to write your own pieces. We'll give you some time today. And then at the very end, I'm not going to force you all to do this, but I'm going to invite you all to share what it was that you created today as a form of really actually jumping into and experiencing this art form in our own healing. So I say that because some of you are probably thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. And we may have some people thinking, okay, I think I can do this. So as I'm going through the presentation, I encourage you to continue to think and find just wherever that courage is within yourself to think about and consider sharing your story, because it contributes to the communal healing that can take place. All right, a little bit of background. I'm gonna just get some water here. So we know that minoritized individuals, we face tremendous challenges. And a lot of what the research shows is that people of color, refugees, immigrants, people who have been marginalized in this country, oftentimes what we have to deal with is how do we navigate our cultural identity with the identity of this country, right? Like the Western identity. So that's oftentimes a big stressor for us. And then how do we navigate the complex world that includes the legal system, the family systems in this country, westernized family systems, the language, while we are also trying to stay true to who we are in our own cultural identity. So the conflict may be, how much do I want to retain in terms of this the traditional mindset or even the collectivistic mindset? So for example, I don't do things for myself, I do things for my family. My decisions are represents my family and not necessarily myself first. So those are the more collectivistic values. And then also spirituality. How much do I want to continue to buy into what might be more traditionally spiritual in my community, as opposed to maybe denying spirituality altogether or taking on what it may be more westernized spiritual beliefs. So these are some of the things that research shows as major stressors for people of color. Also, kind of this inability to bridge two worlds. I'm sure many of you have heard that. What I would also present and propose to you all is that that is not sufficient. That's not all the things that we struggle with as communities of color. We also struggle with the fact that our history, what makes us incredibly strong, and the plethora of knowledge that our ancestors had has been erased by our oppressors. We don't talk about how incredibly strong we are as a people. We don't talk about how incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable our ancestors were, because all of this has actually been erased. And that's a pain point for us. That is a major stressor for us. Also, historically minoritized or marginalized groups have had to learn how to navigate systems that have been constructed to actually continue to oppress us. So it's not just learning the new world and learning the new culture, but it's also navigating a system that has been set to actually keep us from succeeding, keep us from continuing to grow. I would say too that there needs to be a discovery of the beauty and richness of our own cultures, of what makes us special. And we need to actually understand this and discover what has been tried to be erased, right? To uncover this, to discover this, so that we can actually take back the stolen wisdom, the stolen practices, and this false sense of white normativity, so that we can actually create our own narrative and our own stories. For example, for a long time, mindfulness and meditation was not seen as a valuable or real intervention when it comes to mental health. For a very long time, we did not have the science to show the benefits of meditation and mindfulness. As the science continued to evolve, and we were able to actually demonstrate that the brain can start to change because of mindfulness practices and meditation, this has been colonized and has been taken into different interventions from Western society and used as something that is now validated, but not always credited to Eastern religion, Eastern practices, and Eastern philosophy. It's another example of how people in power have actually taken, stolen, and then rebranded something as their own. So I encourage us to think about, how do we know what we know? And how can we actually step into our truth and step into ways of healing that has been a part of us for so long? And spoken word is just really one part of that. So it is incredibly helpful for us to understand our history. We know about intergenerational trauma, right? Intergenerational trauma, for those in the room that may be less familiar, is this concept that trauma can actually be passed down to your children and your children's children through your genes. So intergenerational trauma has been shown and proven not only genetically but also behaviorally as well. Institutional racism, oppression, and assimilation. This has been very core to a lot of communities of color, and there is this idea that there are going to be some stressors and we're going to have to deal with it. But there's also preventative things that we can do. There are also things that can help actually make us more resilient when we are facing everyday stressors, especially structural stressors. These are things that have been referred to as protective factors. So if we know that we are living in a society where the systems are set up against us and our histories have been erased, and if you are Hmong, likely, you're very familiar with the diaspora of not having a country. And when you don't have a country of your own to go back to, a country where you see your language spoken, your values lived, in a lot of ways, it can feel like we are an orphaned culture, ethnic group. And so there's a pain that comes with that. There's a pain of, I can't ever actually just fly somewhere and then land somewhere and see things that, represent me, my family, and actually have streets named after me, or buildings, or cities, or countries. And so this plays a toll on us. But when we think about the protective factors, what can we do to make us more resilient? What we find is that community is a protective factor. What that community looks like, we get to decide for ourselves, but it is a major protective factor. Earlier, Dr. Yee talked a little bit about suicidal clues, and a part of that is isolation. Because even the most introverted people still will find ways to connect in ways that are comfortable. And when you become more and more isolated, especially when you are more of a collectivistic culture, that is a huge risk factor. So connection with community is really, really important in terms of that protective factor. Cultural hope that our history, our traditions, our language will carry forward in our children is also a protective factor. Having pride in our ethnic identity, over the years I have seen our community, the Hmong community, I should say, further embrace our dresses and our clothes and how we express ourselves in fashion, which is incredibly, amazing to see. And then also spirituality, involvement in beliefs, understanding, the holistic person, the holistic health of someone, including physical, mental, spiritual health, can be a protective factor. And then social support outside of even just your community, having social support that extends beyond that is really, really helpful. Now, there can be a lot of pressure for us, maybe pressure that we put on ourselves, or pressure that our community puts on us, our family members put on us, to do the things that maybe our ancestors weren't given the opportunity to do, to fulfill the dreams of our ancestors. And this can be both very motivating and encouraging, but for some people it can be a lot of pressure, and it can feel like I could never do that, or I'm a huge disappointment. Thinking about this and understanding that there's so many different ways to interpret this, and there's so many different ways to actually tap into our culture can be very, very helpful. And again, one of the ways that I will submit to you all as that modality or that pathway is through words, stories, or narratives. For a long time, in many of our communities, telling stories has been one way to hold on to knowledge and passing those stories down. But it has also been a way for us to get our emotions out, get our thoughts out in a way that may be more culturally accepted, think about like gutia, right? And the artistry that is behind that is that can allow the person who is saying your gutia to share some of their thoughts in a very poetic way, and they can talk about things that maybe you can't talk about in plain speak, right? So you can talk about dating, you can talk about flirting in certain ways that would not be culturally or as culturally acceptable in plain speak, for example. So spoken word is a way for us to really talk about our truth, whether politically or our personal experiences, our personal truth. It allows us to express it in a powerful way that people can connect to. Maybe it's the emotion or the message, but also when people connect, right? So this is one of the things that really stands out to me. When I share my pain, and your pain can connect to my pain, that's the human experience that we get to experience together. And that's what can happen when we are engaging in spoken word, when we're not just putting our thoughts down, but we're sharing it, and then other people are sharing it. And now we have, more of a collectivistic healing that can happen. So thinking about our oral traditions, thinking about ways that we can express ourselves. This is an exciting opportunity for us. I'm sure every single one of you has a story of your own. Stories that you know will be important to write down and to get out. Spoken word is cathartic. So cathartic, is really this feeling of, I've just released all of this emotion. If you've ever had a really good cry, maybe you watch a movie and it just hits something and then you cry really hard and you're like, ooh, I feel better now. That's cathartic, right? And sometimes, I love to karaoke, let me just say, and singing and belching out a song can feel very healing, very cathartic, because you get the emotions out. That's what we're kind of talking about here. We're talking about write your truth, write your narrative, and then get it out. It doesn't have to be expressed in any particular way, but as long as it's expressed in a way that is true to you, that's really what we're trying to get at here. So, one of the things that has been incredibly important to me in this work, because I've been doing spoken word for a very long time. In high school, actually, is when I first started doing spoken word. And I always knew there was something healing to it. I always knew there was something to it, and every time I would go to open mics or go to slams, there's a different feeling that comes about it. And so when I became a therapist, I created a curriculum, and it was a group therapy based on spoken word to help participants actually engage in different activities over time. It was over a 12-week period. And it was incredibly powerful because then we had different things that we could write about, prompts, whether about our cultural identity or trauma or different forms of oppression, and coming together, and it was incredibly healing. And so what I would like to propose, especially if we have different people in the room that are healers, how do you continue to build this into the work that you all do is something that I would encourage you to think about as a way for us to continue to support different forms of healing, different forms of knowing. So some of the things we can do is we can integrate this into current therapeutic interventions. What we can do is we can also continue to share and teach about poetry, about spoken word. We can provide spaces, venues, events, platforms for people to come and to share their piece, their truths, their spoken word pieces. And we can engage our community, our cultural communities, and then really encourage cultural humility and healing. I would love if we have people in the room that knows how to speak or read and write in Hmong. If you want to do this in Hmong or in your language, I invite you to do that, because I think it doesn't really matter if someone else does not understand your piece, because you've put the work in, you've written it down, and you are sharing it. And so I would encourage you to think about that as well. All right, so I do want to give you all a chance to write your own pieces. Okay? I'm going to give you all some time, and as I give you all some time, I want you to take a piece of paper that's on your table and a pen. If you only know how to read and write in Hmong, please write something in Hmong. I invite you to do a free write. That means write about anything that comes to your mind, but if that is not something that comes naturally for you, if you feel like, oh, I really want a prompt, I want something so that I can understand where to get started, I'll give you all some ideas, and then I will share one with you all, another one with you all, to give you guys another set of ideas. So some thoughts. If you don't want to just do a free write and you're thinking, I need a prompt, I need to know what to write about, a category to write about, think about things like any kind of experience that you have overcome, you have had to overcome. Or maybe an experience that had been really difficult for you. So the first poem that I shared with you all, I call my daughter poem. I actually wrote that when I was in graduate school in my doctorate's program, and I was really struggling because, and when I started my doctorate's program, I had 2 kids already. But I found myself struggling in this place of being in a doctoral program. I was one of 2 other people of color. It was all white people outside of that, and it was difficult for me to kind of like navigate how do I fit in this space, and what does this look like for me. But when I would go home as a Hmong daughter-in-law with children, I also faced a lot of, you better not think you're better than your husband, right? Just because you have a doctor's degree doesn't mean that you can just divorce him and use him. There's lots of messaging of sexism and then racism that I was navigating. I felt like, what am I gonna do? Where do I go to find where my place is? And when I wrote that poem, I found it incredibly healing to take the perspective of what would my mother, my grandmother, what would make a woman, a parent say this to their child? Help me understand and take that position and take that place so that I can really help myself, orient myself into my culture, not from a blaming perspective, but really from a perspective of gaining understanding and insight. So again, thinking about what you all want to write about, think about some of your experiences. There is a prompt that you could use, and that is, I am. Think about that. Who are you? What are you? I am. And you can use that to help you. So I'll share with you all my I am poem, and then I'll break and give you all some time to write, okay? I am from clay earth, straw walls, and sweat beads dripping from sun-kissed bronze skin. Descendant of freedom fighters resisting the Han Dynasty's attempt to unify all of China. Refugees escaping to Southeast Asia, strategically situating mountainside to defend our children and our elders. I am from the pressure point of having to choose between the lesser of 2 evils, being used as shields to U.S. soldiers for the promise of freedom, or remain second-class citizens with no hope in the future. I am from bullets flying, white allies, babies drowning, and more than 50% of Hmong men sacrificed. I am from heroes, Hmong leaders, labeled terrorists for siding with Americans, persecuted, Hmong diaspora, metal wings that flew me to white snow. I am from McDonough Homes, Westside St. Paul, Oakdale, North Minneapolis. I am from Central Senior High School, spoken word, from doing for others before doing for myself. Navigating 2 languages, 2 cultures, 2 truths, fighting sexism in my Hmong community while fighting racism in the larger community. Grappling with internalized racism, learning to love myself, choosing to change for the better. I am from the strong scent of incense, early Saturday mornings, burning herbs, shaman gongs, dozens of cousins riding couch cushions down the stairs, from bride price to working to honor my mother and my father, from entrepreneurs, nurses, and strategists. I am from the steam of rice cooking in the evenings, from ancestors that found the courage to scream when silence was expected. Finding power in failure, learning to lose to win, choosing courage rather than fear. I am from the silver lining, the strength that develops in driftwood. Fighters, survivors, thrivers. I am from clay earth and from concrete sidewalks. I am from unshaken hope, undeniable courage, and the strength to keep fighting. All right. So you can write your own I am from if a prompt is helpful. Otherwise, please feel free to free write. I would love to give you all maybe 20 minutes. I'm looking at the time right now. 20 minutes to write. I know that's not a lot of time, but I'll kind of keep an eye out to see how you all are doing, and then we'll come back to the larger room. And again, I'm going to encourage you to start thinking about sharing, okay? All right, go ahead and get started with your writing.
Sorry, to get my email. It's my work email. people call me Italian, but but I always correct. I try to professional. Bali, I've never met somebody. I think maybe I don't know most of the person that's from Bali. Oh my gosh, I'm really asking. Because I ask like my friends, I want to understand what you want. People Bali. My sister told me that it's a big part of it. It's not cool. Bali, but you know, so what do you mean? To the class or something? Yeah, something like that. So that's what my sister told me. It's like, yeah. So that's what my sister told me. It's like, oh, okay. So if that makes sense. Yeah. People, more people don't really know our names either. A lot more people, I would say, that you know, they think my name is Billy. Oh. So Billy. This is Sally.
You don't meet many people with the same name, especially. Oh, 你講呢個人，哇，真係啊！So wonderful. Ellie, bye. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Might want to move that. It's wonderful.
Nice to meet you.
No wonder. Are you studying psychology too, or what are you studying?
No, nurse.
Oh, nurse. Okay. Cô xã thì các trường study psychology thì biết gì nên giống như ngành dạng đó.
Oh.
Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make an announcement quick. So for our fundraiser drawing here, so I just wanted to just give everyone a reminder that at around lunchtime, which should be around 11 a.m., we're going to make the first announcement for the $1 prizes. So please stick around. If you don't, if you leave, unfortunately, we won't be able to contact you afterwards. And so please stick around so that you can get your prize. We will do the $5 drawings at 3:30. So stick around too, if possible, so that we could give you your prize too. But otherwise, that we do have an addition. One of our vendor, Ian Tao, she's generously donated one of her crystal for us. So it's that big old crystal block right there. So it's super big. I love it. I wanted to bid for it. Yeah, it's beautiful. So yes, how much is that one for? $1 bidding. Okay. So you guys all, I know there's a lot of crystal fans here. So come and bid. And once again, we have we have the statues, but the statues are separate from the crystal. Just FYI. Okay. And the statues are separate too. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know. But otherwise once again, all proceedings will be going towards our community events and all of our healing events and services that we're providing free for our community. Thank you so much for your donations and contributions and your support.
We're going to come back in 5 minutes, so if you're working on something right now, please go ahead and start finishing it up. 5 minutes. All right, let's start to go back to our seats. So if you're still writing, go ahead and start finishing up your sentence, finishing up your thought. And as people are making their way back to their seats, I was able to take a walk around while you all were engaging in your writing, and I saw a lot of people furiously writing away, which is exciting. I'm really, really glad. All right, so I want to ask, who in here wants to be the most courageous one to go up first? Anybody?
I'm ready.
Yes! Hey, would you like to come up here?
Am I setting the trend?
Yes.
I go up there, everyone's gonna go up there?
Yes. That's the agreement, right guys? Yes.
Come on up.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to the stage. Hey, please share your name.
Good morning, everyone. So glad to see everyone here for this lovely event. My name is Viven. The call. Where are you? What are you doing? Why aren't you back yet? Why have you been gone so long? Why aren't you here? Why did you even go? Don't you love your children? If you don't come back now, don't bother coming home. The call. Our daughter has hives. Enjoy your dinner with your friend. One generation healing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, B. All right. How was that? Yes, thank you. Yes. All right, so I'm going to invite someone else to come up here. Who would like to share their story? Yes, back here. Okay, then we'll do you and then you'll be next. All right.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabrielle. Numb, unaware, confused, and lost. What is all of this? And how did I get here? Is this life? Why does it feel unpleasant? Help me, someone. I don't get it. Tears are falling down my face. The pain is unbearable. I just want the feeling gone. I am told to quiet my sorrows. My tears aren't needed. I just wanted words for what I felt. But what the heck, I'm just 3. Maybe it's just easier. It's easier to end this misery, but how? But then, I turn to what I'm familiar with. Movies and music. Wow, mosh, yeah, okay. That's the word. It feels right. The way they eloquently explained it, it feels just like what I'm experiencing. 弄出多接来再多. That sounds right. But which one? Which one would be easier? I'm 7. And that's where I stopped.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. That was powerful. Come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is Chua Zhang. I went west, but I'm looking east. I am Hmong and not American. I'm a fighter and a warrior. I'm not just a student or a professional. I was lost, but now I am found. My truth is undeniable. My love is unforgivable. My pride is not forsakable. My life is worthwhile. Hmong means being free. Hmong means being prideful. Hmong means dressing up in our clothes. Hmong means speaking my language. I love being Hmong. Indigenous roots, collective community, oral tradition, poetic language, Hmong pride.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. I know some of you are all there thinking like, okay, I can do this. Who's next? Anyone? Yes? Thank you.
It's okay, it's just speaking your truth. You inspire me today. I want to be more.
Okay, so I went with Dr. Tully's prompt, I am, because I really believe in the power of I am. So mine is very simple. I am spirit, soul, body, mind. I am the seed, warrior, leader, teacher, healer, student, alchemist, disruptor, changer. And like fire and love that my bloodlines have been waiting for, to heal and bless all the intergenerational traumas in my mother's and father's lines and lineages in all directions of time. I am the effector, the magician. I am seeing life, people, spaces, and things with great clarity for my eyes. I love you, my eyes. I thank you, my eyes. My eye sees all things with perfect clarity. I am the energy healer, astrologer, my divine spirit's communicator, co-creator with my divine spirit teams. I am the light language codes activator, interpreter. The power of I am continues.
Woo. Wow. She says she's not a poet. You guys.
You're natural.
This just happened in like 15 minutes. I said I would give you 20, I only gave you all 15, but that's okay. That's incredible. And I hope what you all are experiencing is not, for those that are coming up here that are sharing your story, not just a release of emotion and cathartic, that cathartic experience, But even as the audience, I hope that you are experiencing that connection, that connectivity to each other's stories. So again, I'd like to encourage someone that's sitting right out there right now that's kind of on the edge of like, should I share or should I not? I'd like to encourage you to come up here and share. It is just to release that energy that is inside you. Anyone else? I see a hand. Yes, come on up, please.
My name is Suchi Bang. I am Hmong American, just like any other people in America, just like a normal person and any other American. Just like a normal person, like any American people. Everyone, especially Hmong people, should be treated like any other American people. But since life being Hmong isn't fair, when we don't have our own country, we'll have to be grateful that we're Hmong American.
Thank you so much. All right, awesome job. Okay, all right. Can we get 2 more people? 2 more people to come and share? You think we can do that? Who would like to take a chance? Release some of that energy that is within you. Tell your truth and your story. No one? One more person. Yes. Please come on up, please. All right, we got our last person. Thank you so much for being brave.
Thank you. This kind of took a lot of courage. Okay, sorry if I stutter a little bit. So this was this is kind of long, but it's kind of a spiritual perspective. So I am from a different planet, a different realm, a different kind of people. I'm here to grow and evolve. So I spoke to God, the Creator, and asked Him what I can do to help. He told me that I can go to Earth, and that means that humans need to learn love. I am from Earth. I'm from my mom and my dad. A portal through a strong woman's body, parents who have spent years without their own parents and had no choice but to build a life on their own. Who sent me here? What am I supposed to do? What is my purpose? Why doesn't anyone understand that I am love? A Pisces, someone who is kind, but someone who also feels so alone. I didn't know that Earth would hurt this much, but I will be strong for my family, my parents, my brothers, my sisters, but for myself. I am here to make a difference and to complete my mission. Love. Love is the highest force to exist.
Can we give one more round of applause for everybody who came up here? Thank you. I feel so honored that you all opened your world up and your truths up for all of us to hear. There's a level of vulnerability, so thank you all so much for doing that. And we get to grow together and learn together. So that does wrap up my presentation, but I want to take a little bit of time for any kind of Q&A. If you have any questions, any comments about how this process was for you, or anything like that, please feel free to raise your hand. Any questions or comments? No, quiet group. I already asked a lot of you all, so maybe that's... All right, well, thank you all so much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, I think people are still making their way in, so we'll just go ahead and get started. Because I think we're running late on the agenda. So I'll go ahead and get started. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the full psychology of mental health and also talk about a little bit about healing too, okay? So for those who don't know me, I'm Dr. B. Hyungba, I'm a psychologist. I actually work here at Wilder Foundation. I do psychological testing here, and I'm just right up above us here on the second floor. That's where I spend most of my days. I'm also in private practice, so I have a clinic, and what I provide there is primarily psych testing as well too. So thank you, New and Visionari Luminous, for having me be a part of this conference. And thank you all for being here today on this beautiful Saturday. We're all in this space together, so I appreciate that time. All right, so today I want to start off by talking. I think that this is an important topic because for some of us it might be just a reminder. For individuals who are maybe more familiar, reminders. This might be new to some of us too. Like we don't always take the time to sit back and really reflect on what does being home mean and how does that impact us. So this might be good to know. Okay, so I will start off by talking about what does being home mean. And the part that I'm going to start off talking about is home, the people, we as a group, okay? So, what makes us home, okay? So when somebody says, oh, we have home, or when you go out and you say, oh, we have home here, right? So there's kind of this collective understanding of what it means to be home. Okay, so for us, I think for most of us, it means that we're primarily from Laos or Thailand, okay? That's where most of us are from, although that's not always the case. It means that we're political refugees, so that there is this kind of war, trauma, and displacement story or history. And what, so when you say like war, trauma, and displacement, that's a loaded word. But if you think about just the experiences of the families, they've been through some very traumatic experiences. For example, being shot at, having their villages burned, running through the jungles of Laos, and hiding in fear and terror, wondering if your young kids are gonna make it on that flight to Thailand to safety. All of that is very, there's so much trauma in that, okay? So that's what I mean by being a political refugee. It isn't just that we've just been displaced, but there's just so many deep stories, and everyone is so unique in how they got here. There is also this immigration, so of course, being war refugees and then coming here to the US, there's the immigration and acculturation that occurs. So, at one point or another, we came here, and for most of us, right? So it might not be us specifically, but our parents, our grandparents, or the way of life here in America, what that's like. The navigation, what is that like to land in a land where you to really not have anything and start from square one. That's a lot, And then from there to learn the system, and for like if I think about like my own family, my dad is now in his 60s, right? By my dad was probably in his 20s, 30s, And so it seemed like it wasn't that long ago, but and to land in this country and not know where to go, what to do to help your family, that's very frightening. And then of course, big her history, which shows trust people. We still don't, because of the persecution. We've been betrayed in the different countries that we've landed in. So for them to come to America and Americans be like, oh, I'll help you get services. Like how do you know that you could trust them, right? So of course there's kind of that mentality. And then, of course, there's going to be like discrimination and racism that is experienced, at all levels. You think about your parents, they don't get treated well. And, there's not the kind of acceptance that is needed. So there's a lot of things that's happening. Things from like, oh, why do you eat, like your food smells funny, or why do you dress differently? Why do you talk differently? Will you behave different, So just little things like that really impacts that generation. And then for or for us, of course, there's still a lack of understanding and what we had to go through to adjust. I think being Hmong too implies that we all, kind of going back to my point earlier, that at one point or another, landing here in the US, we all went through poverty of some sort, right? We are very fortunate. We are a very resilient group. Whenever there's a success in the Hmong community, everyone is so happy, because knowing Big history, not that we came to the US, we didn't know the language, and for us to get to this point, I think says a lot about who we are and the hardships that we had to endure, what we had to learn on our own to get us to this point, okay? So I think that history, it really pulls us together. It's kind of this collective identity. Also, kind of in that, we didn't speak any English at one point, right? So we had to learn, and some of our parents and grandparents, they English, but for us, we had to, like, imagine landing in a country where and you have to learn the language on your own. So yeah, and that there is kind of this implied, ESL experience. So like, for example, as I mentioned, I do some psych testing, and so there, I think at one point or another, we might have had ESL experiences, and so it's, and of course, it's ongoing services, at this point, different people who still utilize this ESL. Like I think about big and newer refugees, our Karen populations, Somali populations, and when they have like ESL services, and I see these kiddos, it just kind of brings me back to, my ESL days. What was that like, So definitely for immigrant refugee families, this is something that we've had to go through it. It's not always through the school system. In school, like Mitzi, for example, they'll go and do classes in the community to learn English as much as they can. So again, this is kind of common experience for Pekapona. There is for Pekapona, this kind of reliance on family members, right? So that's kind of what makes us Hmong. So it could be like physical living space, especially many times families stayed with relatives until they could, maybe get a job and start making money to support themselves. Many times we're relying on each other to help raise our children. So it could be to interpret, go to a doctor's appointment and things like that, your family. So these are common experiences that we all have experienced. And kind of overall, we all kind of ascribe to this kind of Hmong culture or practice or way of life, okay? So these are kind of, when you think about Hmong, the people, where you would cheat and they say, oh, we're Hmong. These are all the things that make, like, but when you know, when you connect with someone who's Hmong, these are all the things that you are connecting with without even speaking it, okay? So that's why I say it's the psychology. It says a lot. Like, for example, so before I came to Minnesota, I came to Minnesota in 2018. So before that, I was living in Milwaukee. And, you know, Milwaukee, but the part that I lived in is like the southern part. So in that space, that area there, so every now and then when we go to, my husband and I, when we go to like a Walmart, like for us, it was like very exciting. We're like, oh, because all these things are running through our mind. Oh, we connect because we have this common history. Like you have this kind of common language, this common understanding of what it means to be Hmong, and it feels safe. It feels like home in some ways. Okay. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. Okay. All right, so talking about Hmong, the culture now. Okay, so that was just the people, the history, what makes us, Hmong. So now the culture of being Hmong. So when we talk about culture, what is it like? So what is culture, right? So culture are behaviors, beliefs, and values that is shared by a group of people. So culture, it doesn't have to be ethnic culture. It could be just any kind of culture, right? So like, for example, the homelessness culture. There's a culture there, LGBTQ population. There's a culture there, right? So it's not necessarily ethnic, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. Actually, for our purpose, being Hmong, it is an ethnic culture, okay? And for Hmong, there is behaviors, beliefs or attitudes, and values that we hold. Not always true, but these are kind of general beliefs, behaviors, and values, okay? So these are just a few, okay? But I think you guys all know this and probably know a lot more than me with this. But I just wanted to pull out a few things so that we could have an idea of how this is impacting us. And I'm really glad that Dr. Tali spoke earlier, because I do think that obviously we all agree, I think to a certain extent, that being Hmong is wonderful. In many ways, there's a pride in being Hmong too, and because our culture is deep, and the things that's so great about us as Hmong people, that goes deep. So there's so many great things about being Hmong. So the things I'm gonna talk about here are things that might not be so great, things that might not reflect so well on being Hmong that could have mental health implications. Okay. So we'll start with behaviors, right? So just kind of some thoughts about behaviors. So a big one is, don't cause embarrassment or shame on yourself or your family. I think we all know that, right? That's kind of how Hmong people are. Children, when we raise our children, we expect that they behave a certain way, especially with the like if a child is here in this conference, it's not uncommon for parents to be like, oh, and I don't know about you all, but I have kids, young kids, and that's really hard for them to do. So whenever you move the idea, the teaching is that kids should behave very properly, even though we know that that's not achievable. For women, I think behavior-wise, I think women are supposed to be nurturing and calm, reserved, compliant, right? So right? And so if you see someone, like a young woman who is out in the clubs drinking and partying, then all of a sudden, like there is this perception, oh, maybe cheatage or that's inappropriate, being inappropriate. So kind of this understanding of what behaviors mean. For men, being tough, being leaders, protectors, they're independent, autonomous, they're the ones that make the decisions, so you don't need to get approval from your wife, your spouse, you just do it. Okay? So like that type of behavior or mentality is still very much practiced in the Hmong culture. Beliefs and attitudes, so sons are typically, so I'm talking about the history, I think this is still very common nowadays, right? But I think, thank goodness, I'm seeing not as much of this anymore. But I mean, traditionally, the daughter more valued than the daughters because, of course, the need to carry on the clan name, okay? And for clan functions, Omikong and, for any rituals that we have, it's important to have the men, like through the culture, it's important to have the men hold those positions, okay, to perform those rituals. So as a parent who only has daughters, it would be really hard to figure out who you're going to go to. You don't have that direct person that you're going to rely on, right? So that's why there are those beliefs and attitudes. But at the same time, it sends a message about what it means to be a boy or a girl, okay? Sons will care for their parents, right? So again, this message that this, that is a belief, that's a value, right? But it's hard for young China because they can never fill that role. And even if they do, because nowadays we see that all the time, especially for the parents, we'll also see that don't know that you share because especially then they start worrying like, oh, how are they gonna carry on the rituals for me when they leave me to rest? So then you start getting some distress, but at least the parents, you have to look inside and you're like, oh mom, don't worry, they cannot get all things differently, it doesn't matter, or the parents, the Asian parents, it still causes a lot of distress, okay? So, there's different layers built in here, but you can see how, how the beliefs and attitudes will impact us. And for the Tunaya, if it was a situation where you cannot care for your parents for whatever reason, then that's going to have some mental health implications, right? So I don't know, maybe for whatever reason, you as a son cannot take care of your parents, you're going to start feeling bad about you and like your role in the family and that you have failed your parents. So yeah, there's some real mental health implications with this. This kind of use of clan system for support and mediation, there's still that huge reliance, especially, when it comes to like disputes, like marriage, for example, right? Marital disputes. This is, I think there's that reliance on, share or whatever. I think some people are moving away, but at the same time, this is still a real issue because it still comes down to who is doing the funeral, who is, right? So there's a lot of mental health implications that could come into this. It's all tied into our clan system and how that affects us, okay? So even though we're like, oh, we're very modern, we don't see things the same way, we're more progressive, but it's still, our Hmongness really is deep. And it's really hard to fully get away from that. Values, so education, right? So again, this goes back to our history, right? Having a opportunity in the past to be educated. So so when we came to the US and there is that opportunity, doctor, lawyer, and so on, right? Because So it's highly valued, especially when you like do or it's highly valued, but there's mental health implications with that, right? So as I mentioned, I do testing and I do a lot of cognitive testing. There's a lot of people who are just neurodevelopmentally different. Okay? When that happens and you cannot, so you then you start feeling bad about yourself. Okay, or you go, but maybe in your field it doesn't require a doctorate. And you could be very successful at the bachelor's level, but you get this message of, oh, go you try go to doctor, okay? And you're like, financially, it doesn't make sense because I make enough money, right? And do I want to go back and get in debt just to have the name? We joke around. I don't know if you guys are Hmongjua, but I'm not Hmongjua, so I don't know how this will fall. But I have an uncle who he speaks a lot of Hmongjua, and he'll say like, oh. Right, like okay, yeah, so it's like, do you just want to pay law, or like, do you actually want the knowledge that comes with it? And sometimes we push that message so hard that the purpose of it gets lost, right? But yeah, and then of course there's negative connotations, right? So you because again, we're all built differently. Then what does that say? What is the message that you are getting then? Or not just neurologically, but also you don't have the resources because it costs a lot of money, right? So you're not in a position that you because maybe you have lots of young kids that you're trying to support, and you're having to make tough decisions, for yourself or your family. Like, what do you do? Respecting the elders, that's a value. I think we could all, agree that it's a good thing to be respectful of our elders, right? I think that what we're also learning, like especially in this day and age, is that the way that it might not always be the right way, or I think we're looking at it more critically, and is that the most healthy way, right, to do some things. And so when you start like challenging your launa, it could be seen as, oh, well, you're being disrespectful. But at the same time, if you respect your launa, whatever they say goes, then it could lead to like mental health implications, right? So there's a lot there. Right, and so every now and then she'll say things like, oh, so and so because and like and stuff like that. So it's hard, right? Because there might be the belief that, like for example, a very realistic example may be like, you have in China, and you say, back to the piece about the different gender roles. Your parents don't feel comfortable because you have in China, and so because of that, then they choose to live on their own. And then it might seem to the outsider because on a daily basis. So I think that there's a lot of different beliefs and values and ways that we do things that really does impact many of us on different levels. This community, sense, that we all share, that we all look out for each other. That's kind of the culture too. So we do rely on each other, and we look out for each other. I know that for Mona, it's not very uncommon to and like people are walking by, you're like, oh, look at me, that's normal. But you have Mikana, you don't really see that. Like you can just be breaking out lunch and you'll be like, oh, I brought this today, pass it around, that's very common. Whereas like Mikana, you don't really share, even if you're like, oh, that looks really good. You're like, oh yeah, it's really good. But it's kind of that community that we ascribe to, right? We help each other, we support each other. But what happens though, when you expect that community help, right, that support, and you aren't necessarily getting it. So I'm thinking about like, for example, I don't know about you guys, actually, homeless individual, right? I don't know about you all, but it talks to me differently than if I were to see anybody else that is homeless. Because there is like a sense of, oh my gosh, there's so many different layers to what it means to be home. And for that individual to be homeless, I wonder what's happening. Not to be blaming or anything like that, but just how maybe drained or tapped out the family must be, or the different layers of community that could have been there to help, and yet they're still homeless. And many times, there's more other mental health issues that's going on too. And so family, because they're both their mental health, especially severe and persistent mental health. So, so there's different implications, right? Like whenever you point to me and you're like, oh, this is sometimes you might not be the best in the best position to help them, or and that does create some mental health challenges, like some anxiety or some sadness or helplessness in those situations. Okay, so so I was just gonna kind of highlight some of the things. So I just picked out 3 here, right? And actually, I've been talking about it as I went along. So I don't know that there's so much that I need to talk about in this specific slide. But just the idea that, with each of the things that I talked about there, you could go so much into depth, right? About what it means for us as Hmong people, and how does that impact our mental health? How does that impact our psyche? So like being women, right? This is just, again, these are just examples I was just gonna pull out, but women, you're supposed to be nurturing, calm, reserved, and compliant, right? So what happens when you aren't? Like most people say, you're just very expressive. You just are comfortable with who you are. You speak your truth, and you're just, you just shy, you just say whatever, right? How are you viewed by the people around you? I think it's other people might, like, even if you yourself are very comfortable, other people might not be comfortable with it. Right? So like your mom, for example, might be very embarrassed, might be very ashamed, I don't know, but yeah, there might be other things that could be affecting other people, even if you are absolutely okay with who you are, okay? So I won't go into all of these, but so I think you guys get the point. What I wanted to talk about with this slide is that just some of the considerations when it comes to mental health. So I want us to think about it as there are obvious and subtle implications, okay? So obvious ones are things like, okay, so they, like domestic abuse and violence, right? So the spouse now is abusive, physically abusive, right? Of course, that's gonna have mental health implications. That's pretty overt, okay? That's pretty obvious that by somebody that you could have mental health challenges. But then there are some very subtle things that we do as Hmong people that could also have mental health implications. So, for example, a parent might say things like, "Oh, 個能力夠嘅時候，住三浪子咯." That's implying, right, that okay, you're overweight, and your perspective for a spouse is not going to look great if you continue to gain weight. So, 能力夠嘅時候, okay, but we do that in our home people. We do that, we'll say things like, an example. So I have a nephew, a distant nephew. He was really angry. He's like first year in college now. So the 18 at least. So he was really angry. In Chicago, I think his dad was wanting him to go to like a funeral or something like that in Chicago. And so we got to talking about, and he said, "Oh, 做好就得咁樣啦，佢指嘛佢指住係，依個唔做執嘅啦，你要做一啲啊，佢只包打，佢只包我得處理啦。" And the context behind that is that he is new, so other people will make comments like, "Oh, got the do the law, and the dad's response is, "Oh, the law in the law that she right?" And that's very common. And to him, he was getting so upset, like because this happens over and over, and he's like, "Dad, like why do you talk so badly about me? What did you even need? That's that bad. But when you talk like that, it's really degrading. Like I don't feel good about myself already, and then when you say that, it really is hurtful. And not really realizing that it's just the way that most people are. So there's kind of those subtle mental health implications too. So kind of keep that in mind. Also, the different layers, right? So earlier we talked about the history, what it means to be Hmong, and the challenges that we all went through as Hmong people. Coming to America, having to go through ESL, having to fight and survive for yourself, all the war trauma, all of that is like one layer. On top of that, you have the culture, right? And the kind of nuances of the culture and the expectations and values, and that's another layer, that we need to add into there. And then other layers I didn't add in the slide, but family situation, family layers, right? So if you are your family, if you come from a family who there's a divorce, and right, the mental health implications of that. Maybe you come from a family where you have to and how the society, the culture views you. That's adding more things in there. And then there's kind of personal stuff, right? So like you yourself, your own character and who you are, that's another layer, You have to name, like I said earlier, you have to name a more guy, right? Or if you are just a quiet, reserved person, if you have a more tendency to be more isolative or maybe more depressive, anything like that. So there's layers after layers, okay? And all of these work together, okay? So every one of us is unique. We all have our own lived experiences, but there's many layers to who we are as a person. And then of course there's, you have to think about the mental health implication in terms of within the Hmong culture and then just outside of the Hmong culture, right? So as we were talking about here, all of these things are, within the Hmong culture. But if there's also possible mental health implications in the culture at large, that's going to play a role. So for example, right, if you identify as LGBTQ, and okay, so there's already stigma and shame that is so ingrained and messaged out already about that. And then in this society at this time, it depends on where you live, but LGBTQ at large is still not fully accepted, right? And so when you have that stigma and that shame too, how much of a mental health burden you carry, okay? So there's definitely many layers and many things at play here. So I think that this is important because if you think about each of your own lived experiences, right, and just all the different layers and all the different experiences that you all have, there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of risk factors there for mental health challenges that would arise. All right, so healing then. I think, so I'll talk about just kind of general concepts to healing, but I do think that healing is a very personal and unique experience and journey, okay? And it looks different for every person, okay? So a quick question that you could ask yourself, so you might, healing, I think it looks differently for everyone. And what they believe to be healing looks differently for everyone, okay? Even if you identify as Mona, the healing process just looks different. But something that could help you sort through some of these things is this question here. Is it history? Is it culture? Is it me? Is it them or the other person? Is it something entirely different? In some cases, it might be obvious, the answer to this question might be obvious, and from there you can start already feeling better about yourself. But in some cases, it's complicated. It's very complicated. As I said before, we're complicated beings, right? So when it's complicated, it might be helpful to see a mental health provider or someone, it doesn't have to be a mental health provider, but someone who could help guide you and help you figure out what might be going on, okay? So this kind of ties into like setting boundaries, so history, right? So is this issue that I'm up against, is it because of my history? What I mean by that is maybe I'm very upset because I don't know, somehow maybe maybe they just gave birth. And they might say something like, oh, and you are feeling it as and there's multiple ties already, and you're feeling it, right? And you might be very distressed. So then you might ask yourself, the feelings that I'm feeling right now, is that due to history? Is that culture? Is this a me thing? Like, am I just overly sensitive? Or is this like a them thing? Like, are they just, I don't know, just not caring and insensitive parents? Is this something else? And it could be a combination, but it could help you kind of sort through, right? So it could be something like, there is definitely cultural components here, right? That do like more value to carry on the family name and so on, and you could be very objective. Okay, in this situation, I did not overreact. I was calm when I went into the room, and because of what they said, it really like dug deep. And I thought I had done some healing maybe already about what it means to be a China, but what they said really got me upset. So maybe it's how they said it. Maybe it's a them thing. Maybe the way that they said, oh, like it was just very hurtful. And they didn't care that I was there, that I was present. So it could be culture, it could be the way that they said it, and you might have approached it very appropriately, and yet you're still very distressed because of that situation. So yeah, just something to kind of walk through to see what is going on. It could be like an argument, for example, that you just had with your mom, and you might ask yourself, okay, I really am so distressed, like, is it something that is going on with me? Is it something that my mom said? Maybe the way that she said it. Maybe there's a cultural piece here, a value piece, a history piece. And it could be that, based on Gunia operating and Gunia Chopoli from India and so on, right? And that they don't know any better. The way that Gunia is something that her mom would have said to her, a message that her mom would have said to her. And my mom is saying this to me because it's that's the only thing that she knows. So it's not that nu chi bao hai lu or like nu chi bao sa. It's just something that she's always done, and she never thought to stop and think about that and say, how is this going to affect my child, right? Because our parents are not that as psychologically minded, right? And then you, as the receiver of that message, maybe in that particular situation, maybe you've had a rough day at work and you just came home and now your mom said this. And now it's like, okay, I'm so upset, I'm furious, and I said some things that wasn't appropriate, and so now then you're stuck with, okay, yeah, that was partly my fault too, maybe I shouldn't have said that, right? And so yeah, just kind of sorting through some of these thoughts about, okay, what might be going on here. So I said that that's kind of tied into like setting boundaries, right? So when I say boundaries, I think physical boundaries, that's an easy one. I think we all understand physical boundaries, Physical boundaries is just your physical self, right? If you don't like somebody doing anything inappropriate, or you sense is inappropriate towards you, you back up, you leave, okay? That's a physical boundary. Mental and emotional boundaries is a little bit harder. That's all like in your head, right? So sometimes you're like, oh, feeling I can't stop it, but maybe a certain way that maybe your spouse talks to you, and it really gets you worked up, that's a mental or emotional boundary that they are broaching or that they've penetrated, and that's why you're so upset, right? So it's setting those boundaries sometimes could be really hard. So just kind of recognizing that, that you are frustrated, that there might be mental or emotional boundaries, especially if physical boundaries is an issue, that there might be mental or emotional boundaries that might be, that they're treading on. Making space for yourself, I think, especially women, women at large, but I think more women, especially if we are getting this message of you have to be calm, you have to be appropriate, you have to be quiet, and you can be outspoken. You have to make space for yourself. That could again look differently for everyone, but I think the main idea is that you have a space to be who you are and be comfortable with who you are. You have to find a voice. Some people, even if you're introverted, you need to be able to find a voice so that you can speak your truth whenever you need to, and you're okay to speak that truth. So yeah, finding that space oftentimes is healing for people. That's self-love, by the way. Finding that space. I think people, when you use the term self-love, I think it sometimes, especially where you're not very boastful, you're very reserved and very humble already. When you say self-love, I'm practicing self-love. I think people could look at that negatively, like, oh, they're all about themselves and self-love and blah, 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 whatever, right? But it really is just about making space for you to be you. Similarly, giving yourself permission. Sometimes now we, as a people, need permission, more mental and emotional permission, but we need permission in order for us to do something because where we live by rules. It's like, so for example, and as Asians, we're very compliant. I get a lot of kiddos, right, where they have struggled a lot, like in school, like because they are struggling. And they don't make any fuss about it. Like, when it comes to behaviors, they are very well put together, like they don't cause any trouble. Whereas other y'all catch on to whatever is going on, it's very easily identifiable because they're gonna act up. They're gonna get up and go, like just leave the classroom. And the teacher will be like, hey, get back in here or whatever. But they'll run up and down the hallway, they'll cause some issues. But the Asians in particular, we're very quiet. And because of that, we're very vulnerable to falling through the cracks in many ways. So yeah, and sometimes we, going back to my point of just getting permission, sometimes you have to say, yeah, you can do that, or you go ahead and do that. It's very so he's already college graduate. So when it comes to dating, for example, he needs the approval of before he could date and happily date someone, right? And I'm always like, I think what you're looking for here is just approval. Is it because a relationship because approval, and he's like, yeah, that's what's going on. It's because he can never commit to that individual because he needs that approval. And I think we see this too in the workplace for our generation, right? When we're in the workplace, it's really hard to, especially if you're not being treated appropriately in the workplace, it's really hard to say something, right? Or you need the approval of someone before you could maybe have a great idea that you want to roll out for the team. And it's really hard to go venture into like maybe that drastically different route unless you get the approval of like a supervisor or someone to say like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, So yeah, I think many times we're looking for approval. And then, this piece of letting go of your perceptions of other people. I think this is kind of an interesting one because, it's hard, like something that's hard to wrap, I think your minds around, at least people that I've spoken with, is that you're perceived differently from different people, right? By different people. So, that you, like for example, right? I'll use myself as an example. Which is shady perceived, okay? But I have a different perspective of myself versus like this person and that person and the other person, right? They might look at you and might be like, oh, I respect that person so much because they're highly educated, and right? So you have maybe a perspective of them. Actually, maybe their mom has a different perspective, their brother, their friend has a different perspective of right? And so for you as an individual to always think that you have to live up to all those different perspectives is exhausting, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. I think you have to live with what is comfortable with you, right? Does Shima know that everyone has different perspectives of you, and you can't satisfy everyone's perspective. They both have a perspective about you that you can't change, okay? And it is what it is. And there are some times where that perspective is something that you can change, and that would be great, right? But just know that if you are going to live up to everyone's perspectives of you, you're going to really be draining yourself than helping yourself. And it could cause a lot of just mental health challenges, anxiety, and so on. Okay, so the main point here is that you are in charge of your own healing, okay? So, as I mentioned, the case, no one is going to make you change. No one is going to make you feel better. It comes from you as a person, okay? So, okay, so let's say you want to share a you want to put in Shona, a you don't the mental health provider. Even if that happens, no, that person is not making you change. You still have to change from within. If that grief, let's say, or that anger is something that you held on to and you refuse to let that go, that's still gonna eat you up even if you are still seeing a mental health provider. Okay? You can go see the best mental health provider and you're still not going to change if you don't change who you are. Like if you don't decide to change who you are. Okay? So I just want to leave you all with that the change comes from you as a person, a decision to change who you are and be happy and be whoever it is that you want. And that, you know, the rest, you know, if you have great energy around you, people who are hopeful, that's even better. You still can change your situation. That comes from within. Okay? All right, thank you everyone. I'll leave, I think we have some time here, so I'll leave it open to any questions that you guys might have. Yeah.
So for some women, I know that it's very hard for them to like open up and go to therapy.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how do we support and empower men to seek therapy if they need, but therapy to create that safe space and talk about this?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, right, therapy or healing happens in different forms for different people. She had the mental health provider for them to start healing. You want to put you someone that you trust, you can start talking with them, you know. And if you get to the, like, you know, as just your common, because you know, what you don't want to do either is to, change that relationship in a way that you don't want it to change into, right? So for example, you want to support and you actually want to maintain that friendship as it always has been, where it's mutual and you go out and just have a fun time. You may not want to be in that position to be like, okay, now I can be a support, and then and then it doesn't become as reciprocal, right? So yeah, you might not be the best person. 但是係作為有個把對啲人嘅問題給just 給發咗原先啊 it might be good to just continue like having that conversation of, hey, you know, and I really love you. I want to support you. 但是嘛I can only do it so much, and it's okay to be honest about that, right? Because you don't want it to hinder your relationship either. You know, you could say that kind of what Dr. Yi was saying this morning, right? That you know, you could say that all the mental health provider, and then helping maybe make that connection, even going to support them. You know, that might be helpful too. Or even if like, mental health services now, but maybe they just need somebody to be there with them. At their mental health services, you be that person to be there, and you could kind of, you know, be that person to talk with them about, oh, what did you think? And yeah, but they said this, how did you take that, you know? Because they might not have that person in their life. Maybe they don't have, so that's what I would suggest. Yeah.
What do you suggest, or what is your advice for dealing with people like friends and children's, like your kids, who are not as involved with their Hmong side?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, like especially for new generations who are born in America,
Yeah.
they're exposed to like other kind of culture. So I notice and I see that a lot of the younger generations, they're losing that touch of owning up that their mom.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what is just your suggestions or your advice on how to like make sure that that child or that friend still holds onto that part of them? Because I've been seeing a lot of people nowadays who are trying to kind of, I guess, be someone that they're not,
Yeah.
because like they're just not really accepting that identity of being a monk per se.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about like in terms of like mental health, that they should stay connected.
Mental health, cultural,
Mhm.
like culture-wise, or just traditional.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you stay more connected to your Hmongness?
Yeah. How do you like help like those people, like
Yeah, I think the question is, do they want to? Do they want to be connected with their bonus? You know?
So that's kind of what, so just following up with that, um, that's a struggle there. Because for the people that I know, they don't want to be.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how do you really erase that from yourself? Like you can't just really say, oh, I'm not mom.
Yeah.
You know, like even when like mom parents birth you, you can't just really not, like you can't just deny that part of you. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really good question. I don't know if I know the answer to that, but being Hmong runs deep, as I mentioned before, okay? So it goes beyond just the language that we speak, the way that we don't, our way of being, you know? It's so ingrained in us, right? So it's what I will share is that I've been in practice where what appears to be very Americanized kids, young kids, would come in seeking a Hmong therapist because they've gone to other Hmong or other Nika therapists because they're thinking, oh, any therapist will do. I just need a mental health therapist. And at the end of the day, they're coming seeking a Hmong therapist because the root of the issues is very Hmong. You know, so you know it's not necessarily. So it could be an identity thing where it depends on where they are in the identity development. Where you know, because in the identity development, there are times where you push away your identity to take on a different identity, right? So American identity, for example. So it just kind of depends on where they are in that process. But at the end of the day, being Mona, and even if you yourself is very Americanized, you Nika, you don't Nika, you know Monika, the way that you even talk to your parents might be very Nika. But somewhere down the line, maybe your parents or your grandparents or your aunts and uncles, right? And like the expectations of values, it still seeps in there and it causes distress. So I think to answer your question maybe is it depends on the and where they are in their own identity and whether they need to explore and get connected with their wholeness. Because if it doesn't cause any problems in their life, then maybe no need. Maybe they are fine with just who they are. But when it starts creating issues because they're now having maybe identity crisis or they can't seem to connect and now it's, you know, all these things, then deeper in there, there's some home stuff that's coming up. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Yeah.
So you talked about some of the negative implications of our Hmong culture. In your practice, do you advise patients to embrace these norms or to combat them?
You know, the mental health implications, right? I don't know that I advise them to embrace or combat them, but we just really more look at the role that it plays in their life. And you know that question of, is this history, is this culture, is this me, is this them, the other person, you know, is this something else? It's really just really realizing what that is and taking ownership for what is yours to take ownership over. So if it's a pain and hurt that is long been there because of the culture, well, you know what? If you are so upset about it because of the culture, and your goal is to fight that, you might do yourself more psychological harm because you're gonna be up against many things that you can't change. And so at what point do you cut your losses? I do think that, of course, there's a role for education, right? There's a role for advocacy. There's a role for, you know, changing the way that we do things. The Shima, you have to kind of look at what your personal capacity is too. If it's influencing you to the point where you can't sleep, where you are yourself developing mental health symptoms, okay, you have to cut your losses. You have to be able to know when. I can only control the things that I do and, just focus on me and getting myself good before I focus on the culture and the history and changing all of these other things. Any other questions? Great questions, you guys. Yes.
Did you say that you're a therapist and you have your own practice?
Yeah, so I'm a therapist. So I do both therapy and psychological testing. I specialize in psychological testing. So yes, I do have my own practice, and right now I would say that I'm more so specialized in the testing, but I do therapy too. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you deal with mental health in the spiritual way, someone who is transitioning and like they're awakening spiritually?
Yeah, that is, I kind of see that as a specialty, and I wouldn't say that I specialize in that. However, I have had clients who are going through that process, and I learn along with them, and my role really isn't to tell them what to do, what not to do, or to guide them in any way, but it's really to do that exploration. And so for example, I have a young woman who was going through that process, right? And the challenge with her is that new family, the divorce, so she doesn't have, and she's a girl, right? So she's not married, right? So she's going to husband law, and then new parents divorce, but so she's more like father figure, that male figure, right? So it's distressing, not necessarily the process. I mean, it is part of the process too, but it's the situation. And so it's really figuring out like the other different layers that we could certainly work on. Like how do we, work with that so that you could get to a place where you feel better about that situation. And sometimes it is that, I'm not a spiritual guider. I will defer that to a shaman who is more well-versed, and they are connected typically with a shaman, but then that's not my role. My role is really to help them navigate and figure out and process what might be going on with them. Mm-hmm. Anything else, you guys? Well, you guys have been such a great group, very interactive, so I appreciate that. I do have my business cards. If you guys have any questions, feel free to take one. So as I mentioned, I work at Wilder too. So I work full time here at this building, and I do psych testing. But in my private practice, it's more here at Wilder. I only do internal referrals, and so I don't get just whoever comes in the door, but private practice I do. So if you guys have any questions, want to reach out, feel free to get a hold of me too. Okay?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, thank you.
but don't go far. We will be having our next guest speaker here who's making a grand appearance. We have here from the organization ALW Foundation. The ALW Foundation is devoted to offering charitable grants aimed at supporting mental health initiatives and suicide prevention programs. So we'll go ahead, and have Shay come up here. All right, we'll give a round of applause.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Shang and I am from the ALW Foundation. Earlier in September, my 14-year-old cousin committed suicide. She took her own life because she was struggling with mental health issues. Ultimately, she lost her battle. Her suicide took everyone by surprise, basically because she seemed, on the outside to us, she seemed like a typical 14-year-old teenager. She was happy, she was involved in sports, she was involved with friends, she had wonderful activities after school that she was involved in, so her suicide took all of us by surprise. She was getting help for her mental health struggles, but we didn't know that it was at the extent that it was. She had never mentioned anything to us. I've known her when she was a little girl, and every time I talked to her, she would just say, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm just going through teenage stuff." So we didn't think of it as her mental health being as big as it was until she ultimately took her life. The ALW Foundation stands for Angelina Lane Wong. We started this foundation because we wanted to build a legacy for Angelina so that she can continue to help others. Growing up, she was always so helpful. She would always put others' needs before hers. She would always help someone and get help for someone rather than helping herself. So she was a very giving person. The foundation's mission is to raise money for mental health issues and suicide prevention, especially within our Hmong community when mental health is so stigmatized. We want to give out charitable grants and donations to programs or organizations that deals with mental health and suicide preventions. I don't know if you guys have heard, but we are putting together a benefit concert called the Luca the King Concert at NIP next weekend, Saturday the 23rd. Proceeds from the concert will benefit the foundation directly, just so we can raise money and give out charitable donations to programs such as this. We do have Win here in the house, just to talk a little bit more about the foundation and the concert. For more information about the foundation, you guys can go on Facebook and just search ALW Foundation. You should be able to find the ticket info, event info on there. So if you guys haven't already, please get your tickets and come and support this wonderful event. Like I said before, the proceeds will go directly to the ALW Foundation, so that hopefully we can give out donations to organizations such as this that deals with mental health, especially in the Hmong community. When couple of some okay,
Kini sama. Aku yang hari ni social nak betul ko, aku perlu ngam. Kucipat perlu no, tapi buat sama G%. Tapi jadi ngomong sekisah dan tahu yang di besar. Kau share the, kau share betul ko ni share dia. Oleh Shanghai perlu foundation ni perlu concert je buat sama jadi ngomong sekisah yang perlu ngam jadi cuma kisah kau tu sudah ngom. Bây giờ thì một sân đá bé nhớ cho nó này có bé lúc có ít thì bây giờ lúc đi rồi là tận thế nào thì bây giờ nó đòi lên tới xưa để mà muốn nó sinh hành.
Yeah, that's all I have. I'll take questions about the foundation, concert, anything. Yes.
Who's headlining the concert?
Mr. Win Wing here is, Mong Yang, and we have Tata too. And then Sun Moon and Jim is also guest singing at the concert.
Hi. Me and my husband will be there performing, so come support.
Yes. No other questions? Oh, yep, go ahead. Yep, so my little cousin took her life in early September of this year, so it's a fairly new foundation. So we just founded it a couple months ago. Back there, do you have a question? The concert is Saturday. Doors open at 5 for meet and greet tickets and VIP. 7 o'clock, doors will open for GA tickets. And the concert will start at 8. We have 6 great guest performances, local artists here in the cities, and then we have Tata and Mongyang and as the main headliners. Yes, back there.
What is the mission of the foundation and also what do you plan to do with?
So the mission of the foundation is to give charitable grants or donations to organizations or programs that deal with mental health issues and suicide prevention. And we do want to give out support to the Hmong community as well regarding this issue, since it's not talked about as much in the Hmong community. Did you have a question? So on Facebook, if you search ALW Foundation, it'll pull up the page, and then on the page you should go to the events, and you'll find ticket information on the events. Do we have tickets with us today? Auntie, do we have tickets with us today? Yes. We do have tickets with us today too. So if you're interested, come find us. Yes.
You mentioned the foundation's credit will be open up for
Are we open? I think that's a good question. I think it's so new that right now the Shopee, but we are open to partnerships. Yes. Okay. If there's no other questions, thank you very much. Oh, yes, Chewy.
Are you guys hosting any events this year, next year? What type of events, and is that something that we could be involved in as volunteers or participants, or?
Yes, definitely. So, like I said, we're a new foundation. Go like our Facebook page. We'll put updates as we need. I think we are planning to do events in the community to raise money, raise funds for the foundation. Right, as concert-wise, this is our first one, so we're not sure if we're going to do other concerts to benefit it, but we're thinking of doing community events to fund the foundation too. So go like our page and find out more. We'll update it as we go. Thank you so much.